After we announced my pregnancy, my sister-in-law's plan to humiliate me at my husband's party backfired, landing her in jail in a divorce. For the last 7 years, I to 9F have been wed to Harry, except for his relationship with his sister Kayla, who brings all the negativity into our life. I enjoy everything about our marriage now. Don't get me wrong. When I initially met Kayla, I loved her, but with time, I rapidly changed my view. She is poisonous, manipulative, and really negative. Knowing the kind of person she is, I have worked hard over the years to be on her good side. My husband dated Syl's best friend when he was 17 in the past, but they subsequently broke up since he felt under pressure to be with her because of Syl. His sister said he and another friend of hers should be together when he turned 23 and discovered he was single, but he disagreed. She went crying to their parents about how she wanted him to wed someone she felt comfortable with, but his parents hardly really listened to her throughout their great battle. While my husband and I were meeting and falling in love, his parents were quite encouraging, but Syl always treated me coldly. She would always bring up Harry's exes for no apparent reason whenever I was present, reminding him of how well they were doing and suggesting how he could get in touch with them. This continued for some time. Harry also thought this strange and would ask her to stop bringing up his exes. I was not the only one who saw this. Then Syl would get enraged and start mocking me, claiming I was jealous and Harry shouldn't be with someone like me. Syl would deliberately invite one of Harry's exes whenever his parents would call us for supper, saying she had inadvertently come across them that day and had to ask them politely. She doesn't follow me, but she checks my Instagram constantly as well, since I have a public account. I observed she is usually the first person to see my stories. Should a man comment on my photograph, she would then go to her brother and grumble over how I was sharing indecent images of myself. Harry and I would actually chuckle at her claims. She persuaded Harry to split off with me when he and I agreed to live together, telling him I had many defects as a woman and that she could find someone far better than him since I had been just friendly to her all along. This comment really wounded me. Sadly, Syl's treatment of me got even worse as soon as Harry and I were engaged. Everyone started applauding Harry and me as we revealed our engagement, but I observed Kayla was somewhat quiet. Then, startled everyone, she sprang up from her chair and left our gathering. Later, she called Harry, sobbing and yelling about how she didn't value receiving the news with everyone else. She felt she was the closest to him and deserved to be the first one to know of his engagement. Later on, she messaged me nearly borderline threateningly, advising me on how I should treat her brother as she had always been the only female in his life. I nearly shuddered over the strange message. I left her message on scene, which I know must have offended her even more. Not even bothered responding. Every time Syl saw me, she started to progressively ignore me. She stayed involved in all the wedding preparations for whatever reason, like when I went dress shopping and had my bridal shower. Though both my future mother-in-law and fiancé called her out on it several times, her criticism of the wedding reached a whole new level as she freely expressed her unhappiness with my decisions. Her actions persisted. One day, Kayla overheard me talking about the centerpiece with my future mother-in-law. She started to make fun of me right away, stating how my decision had no class and how this was why she wanted her brother to wed someone better for me. That was the tipping point, and I lost control. I made it plain to her that she was no longer invited to our wedding and yelled at her that I could not stand her continual taunting and criticism anymore, shocked and gasping in surprise. As if she had never expected me to challenge her, Kayla was infuriated even by my mother-in-law, who backed me. Later on, Kayla contacted Harry, moaning about how I embarrassed her and insisting he should control me since I would be his wife. Harry insisted strongly that he supported my choice and that she would not be invited to the wedding should she not. She grudgingly texted me a sincere apology. I saw it and once more left it on read. I was already tired from getting ready for my wedding, and I wanted nothing to do with her drama. She did visit our wedding in the end, since I wanted her to not criticize us afterward. Everyone, including the guests, seemed to have no issue following the pink tones and pastels chosen for my wedding, but she arrived looking as though she were attending a funeral, a black floor-length gown with a veil. To put it mildly, we were stunned. Sil visited everyone, sharing her grief at losing her brother to another woman. My husband approached Sil about her discomfort with her wedding attire at the reception, saying that she had the right to wear whatever she chose and that I was too domineering. She sought to portray the victim when her nonstop scene-making persisted. My mother-in-law and father-in-law ultimately ordered her to leave. It was embarrassing for me. Ever since that day, I avoid her. I forbade Sil anywhere near our kid. When I delivered my son, Nate, she tried to oppose it, but my husband's parents had my back. They supported my choice and knew exactly why I wanted Sil far from my infant. Sil suffered a miscarriage with her then boyfriend, Jamie, 2 years ago, and it totally shattered her. For everyone, that was indeed a depressing period. Given our already childbearing status, Harry and I felt bad for her. We chose to be somewhat more lenient following her miscarriage. She could connect with our kid, Nate, so we would welcome her to our house despite her behavior with me. She has been rather lovely to our son, really shocking. She looked to have changed at first, but with time, she returned to her former self. She constantly talks about how difficult her life is, how things never seem to go for her, and blames ex-friends or managers for upsetting her life. I have found over time that she is never wrong in her thinking. She is always attempting to get people on her side by playing the victim card and hardly acknowledges any flaws in confrontations. She chose to get married this year and invited everyone to save us, given our relationship seemed to have improved. Harry was surprised to learn we were not invited. She began to explain how she wouldn't let me come since I would cause a disturbance at her wedding. When we questioned her about it, having never done anything to her, I phoned and asked her why she would think something like that. Kayla began to tell how she had deliberately dressed in all black for our wedding, so now she was worried that I might do the same. This was why she wanted me off-site. I informed my spouse straightforwardly about how manipulative she was. Outraged about it, after discussing with his parents, Harry decided to let Sil know they would neither be attending the wedding nor would they pay for it. This turned S to tears, and she began to blame me for starting this disaster. Her husband told her she had no right to be pointing fingers at me, as she had freely admitted her own error. Kayla, however, explained her behavior by stating that I should just get over it since our wedding was long ago. Later, she contacted me to apologize and asked for forgiveness as Phil and Mill were still not paying for her wedding. Though I hate to say it, Kayla can be quite charming and convincing when she wants something. I wanted to just go forward from the past and forgave her. Her wedding to Jamie went perfectly. We all showed up and had fun. Not even 6 months later, Kayla appeared at our door grumbling about her marriage failing. For a few days, Harry and I let her stay with us, where she would spend endless hours venting about her husband. They appeared to be struggling to conceive, and Kayla was obviously blaming Jamie for everything. When I went to speak to Kayla, she insisted it was entirely her husband's responsibility. She would be hyper-focused on our lives and tried to create things that didn't exist. When she was not grumbling about her husband, for instance, usually every morning before heading to work, I visit the gym. When I'm running late, I occasionally grab my work clothes so I may finish my workout, have a bath, and change into my business wear. She observed this for some time and would have many questions about it, including why I was bathing or why I even needed to visit the gym. I didn't give it much thought and would tell her how I liked keeping my weight and how I disliked visiting the office all sweaty. She would nod and lick her lips. Mill was telling us about a friend of hers who was divorcing right at lunch. She left her friend's spouse and grabbed half of his assets after learning about his adultery with her. Sil stopped her abruptly to ask my husband whether he and I had signed a prenup before we were married. We paused to stare at her. We stopped eating. She glanced at my husband expectantly as if I hadn't even arrived. My husband told her straightforwardly that he is not someone who minces his words, as he and I both made rather good money, and we felt no need for a prenup. Sil snorted and began to say that he could be blindsided any day and that cheats abound today. Her statements offended me, therefore, I asked her to clarify exactly what she meant. Sil then began to remark how I was obviously meeting someone, as I was usually carrying a change of clothing everywhere, and that as Harry's sister, it was her obligation to warn her brother. These were shocking remarks for me. Phil and Mill arrived right away to save her from continuing to fabricate such things and advised she shouldn't interfere with others' affairs. Without missing a beat, Sil continued to emphasize how she was only trying to be there for her brother and began to joke if our son, Nate, was indeed Harry's son, since he didn't quite look like him. I swear I watched the redness of wrath on my husband's face. In my life, I never had seen him this enraged. Looking Kayla squarely in the eye, he informed her that she was not a mother yet, as she did not deserve to be one, and that her child would be better off in paradise than with someone like her. Kayla's lips hung in stunned disbelief. Mill and Phil simply watched silently as my husband left. Kayla complained about her being a shameless person trying to ruin everything since her life had nothing to offer. She was merely a loser. He informed her, doing nothing all day while her husband worked nonstop. He kept saying that since she was plainly projecting, she should focus on her own marriage instead of pointing fingers at me and asking about prenups. Reduced to tears, Kayla began to wail, expecting comfort. She turned to Jamie seated just next to her, but he never spoke. My husband never has this kind of mental collapse. She eventually got up from her chair and dashed into the toilet. My husband was boiling over. I stroked his hand, and Mill arrived to cool him down, understanding just how annoying she could be. I nodded as he apologized for what his sister had said about our son. Having taken enough from Kayla over the years, I was somewhat relieved that my husband stood up for me so publicly. He apologized to Jamie but totally ignored Kayla once he cooled off. That day, following lunch, we returned to no interaction with Kayla. Her actions were impacting my husband in addition to me. We simply barred her from everything so she could get in touch with us after lunch. Mill and Phil spoke with us and decided Kayla had gone too far this time. They could see how their usually quiet son had gone wild after Kayla had persisted in pushing him. We last spoke with her a year ago, and everything has been running without problems. 2 months ago, I discovered what I was expecting. Given our lack of effort, this was quite unexpected. To welcome another family member makes my spouse and me blessed. We decided to let everyone know on my husband's birthday, since we were waiting for the proper moment to do so. Wanting to honor Harry, Mill and Phil were throwing a great celebration in their lawn. Invited were our close friends and relatives. Sil chose to show her face after hearing about this from others. When we saw her, my husband and I staggered, coming to hug Harry. Sil told him how much she had missed him and how sorry she was for their last talk. Taking my hand, my spouse advised his sister to be apologetic to me because she had pointed fingers at my character. Sil nodded, looked at me, then apologized. She informed me how she had been attending therapy for the previous few months and came to see how inappropriate it was for her to treat me like that. Though I disagreed with everything she said, I nodded as I wanted to be polite to her in front of everyone, since this was a gathering for my husband. Mill and Phil checked in on us and informed us that should we feel uncomfortable, they would kick her out, as they had no knowledge she would be arriving. Harry, however, insisted on not creating a scene. Hence, we decided to let this go. It seemed strange, as Sil was laughing and socializing with everyone during the celebration. She mentioned visiting a therapist, so I wanted to provide her the benefit of the doubt, even though she appeared overly optimistic, completely not her nature. Harry spoke movingly about how he thought he was the luckiest man on earth, appreciative of yet another year spent with a lady like me. When it came time to cut the cake, his remarks made me flush with delight, as we were when we first started dating all those years ago. I couldn't help but value the fact that my husband and I were still intensely in love. Then Harry and I made the decision to let everyone know some fantastic news, grinning. We said we were having a baby, and everyone paused to consider before yelling in delight. My mother rushed up to hug me and started to cry as Phil saluted Harry and myself. Tears streamed down his face. Everyone was eager to know whether we had chosen baby names and was clearly delighted for us. Sil was the one sore thumb that caught out. She seemed stunned. Her mood changed, and she simply turned away from us, appearing irritated. So I assumed maybe she was processing things slowly, though I was a little concerned, thinking she would ruin yet another party for us. I was sidetracked, with other individuals approaching to chat. I got up to assist my in-laws carry lunch, but Rick and my parents begged me to stay seated, telling me I should not even move at this point. Seal approached me, beaming, as I was calmly waiting for my husband to bring me a meal, lively, saying that she personally wanted to offer me dinner since she was so excited about my pregnancy. She handed me a dish. She even said, as she passed me the plate, about how she wanted to make it up to me for all the times she had been nasty to me in the past. I nodded and politely approved. She then turned to go. I was ready to start digging when I fortunately found she had put shrimp on my dish. I know I am quite allergic to shrimp, hence I was surprised Seal even brought me this. Disappointed, I shook my head and got up to get my own lunch. Jimmy approached me at that point to wish well on my pregnancy. After a little conversation, he asked me why I hadn't been eating. Jimmy reassured me not to worry and removed the dish from my hands. After I pointed out how Seal had served me shrimp, probably by error, since he enjoyed eating shrimp, he told me he could have this dish. I could buy a fresh plate for myself. I nodded, grinned, then turned aside. Jimmy began to puke and retch across this dish. 5 minutes later, not even 5, concerned everyone stopped eating and watched him stagger to get out of his seat. Concerned, Harry and Kayla hurried towards him. Jimmy gestured at his plate, then at his throat. Our eyes grew wide with amazement as we realized what he had eaten definitely made something wrong with him evident. Jimmy passed out. Then, everyone gasped in amazement and worrying. Kayla hurried over to examine his dish, and her eyes grew shocked. She turned to stare at me and inquired whether I had handed her husband my plate. I nodded. Someone called for an ambulance amid the tumult, and he was hurried to the hospital. Through all of this, Kayla was sobbing nonstop and was staring angrily at me. Jimmy had been poisoned, we were told later on. Knowing that the plate belonged originally to me, I nearly passed out upon hearing this. Jamie consumed what may have poisoned my baby and me, not yet known to Harry, Phil, or my parents. This is since nobody knew what was in the food he consumed that had caused him to faint in this manner. The police were summoned to get evidence from it. Jamie is still in recovery in the hospital while I'm typing this. Kayla stayed with him overnight. Relatives calling to find out what happened to Jamie and who might have poisoned him. Have my husband and I fielding calls. What has transpired shakes Mill and Phil. They are sleeping over at our house since they are terrified to return back to their house. Nobody knows what happened abruptly. While everything was going so nicely, tell everyone that the plate originally belonged to me and how Kayla had come and presented it to me makes me terribly afraid. Should this evolve into an inquiry, I will have to tell the cops the truth, though, most importantly, I am now rather concerned about what my Sil could do to me. I feel quite awful about what has transpired. I don't want to be around her, nor can I bring my kids anywhere close to her, as she obviously has no restraints about trying to poison me. I feel bad about handing Jamie my meal and maybe contaminating my bill. Update 1. Whoa, thanks for the thousands of comments on this post in just a few hours. I never would have guessed I could have received this many answers. I typed this earlier and had shaking hands. I haven't been able to sleep, though what everyone says. I do feel somewhat accountable for the event involving my bill. I should have simply tossed the dish away. I'm not sure why I let him grab it from me. I keep crying about his future, knowing something is amiss. My hubby has been hovering close to me, though he doesn't know what I know about his sister. He believes I'm only worried. I agree with the remark saying I should get down and gently chat to everyone, although I'm not sure if everyone will believe me. Mill and Phil do have security cameras set all around the house, given that this birthday celebration took place in their backyard. I am confident they could check and confirm via their camera that Kayla presented me the plate. I'll speak with everyone tonight. Then update. Update 2. We then chatted, and I am very happy to have the nicest in-laws on planet Earth. Mill and Phil are already staying over with us, so I sat down with Harry and them over dinner to let them know I had something crucial to share. I began by inhaling deeply the weight of the circumstances slumping on my shoulders. Everyone gathered around. I related the birthday party's events, including how Sil had handed me a plate of prawns, and Jamie had unintentionally consumed it, causing his sickness. Their shock and incredulity reflected my own as I spoke. Mill and Phil looked at each other, clearly worried. Harry's face transformed from uncertainty to rage. I went on, expressing my concern about S's intentions and past attempts to hurt me. Faced with the possible repercussions for myself and our unborn kid, I hesitated to share this material. Being the pragmatic woman Mill is, she advised right away, looking at the security camera tape. Given the gravity of the matter, Phil nodded in agreement, though clearly agitated. Harry stayed quiet to process the startling disclosure. Reviewing the security footage from their camera app, the truth was indisputable. The video shows us presenting to me the poison plate and then what happened to cause Jamie's suffering. The weight of the data made no space for uncertainty as the knowledge sank in. Emotions ran strong. Now totally aware of his sister's evil intentions, Harry battled to control his wrath. Their daughter's activities horrified Mill and Phil, who also found the extent she had gone to cause disturbance shocking. Stunned in silence, we tried to figure out why she would act in such a manner, given this is a very serious issue. My in-laws have opted to forward this material to the police. Following this disclosure, Jamie is the one who has to lodge charges on Sil. Hence, Phil and my husband will be visiting and meeting him after he recovers. I want to cry every time I consider how I let Jamie have my poison dish. I have no idea how Jamie will react. I am very anxious about him, so I cannot eat anything right now or sleep. I will let you know about anything noteworthy. Update 3. Alright, lads. I'm back with an update at last. Although I know it has been a month since my previous update, right now, I'm a pregnant woman experiencing a lot. First things first, she was detained. After seeing the proof, my in-laws handed the recording to the police. Kayla admitted everything right away and did not even dispute the claims. She started crying. Jimmy was as startled as any of us when my husband approached him about what had transpired, telling him he would always be a part of our family regardless of what he decided to do. My husband advised him to press charges against his sister, since this was such a wicked thing to do. Once Jamie recovered, he not only chose to prosecute charges but also sought a divorce, emotionally begging them to pardon her. Kayla called Mill and Phil. As it happens, Kayla is pregnant herself. She tried to control them by telling them they should do this for the benefit of their granddaughter, begging them to bail her out. Phil strongly advised her, nevertheless, that she should at last learn to own her actions and that they were done coddling her. Though Mill is quite depressed about what is happening to her daughter, she knows that her actions cannot be simply forgiven. The cops discovered proof she had tampered with the meal meant to damage me, which backfired and resulted in injury to her husband. She has been charged with several offenses, including risking life, causing damage, and tampering with food, thereby compromising integrity, saying how this was all my fault. Anyhow, Kayla had been pleading with Jamie not to charge her. Fortunately, Jamie's mind is set on punishing her. Her court hearing will begin shortly. I doubt she can flee this time. My son and I are doing okay, to everyone inquiring. In the meantime, about what his aunt has done, he is clueless. We want our son to know and avoid these circumstances. Hence, Harry and I have discussed, and we do intend to sit down with him and tell him the truth. Having a difficult, but absolutely vital conversation with a young child will be challenging, but essential. As instructed by my doctor, I also get frequent ultrasounds for my pregnancy every 2 weeks. We want the kid to be a surprise. Hence, we do not intend to find out her gender. Knowing what has happened to Kayla, my parents have been somewhat protective of me. They are urging me to see treatment, since they are concerned this could compromise my psychological well-being during the pregnancy. I agree with them, as while behaving normally, I have a deep-rooted phobia of what Kayla did to my meals and avoid eating any outside food or anything I have not made myself. Hopefully, my husband will help me to overcome this illogical phobia, as he knows about it and supports me all through. Update 4. I last checked 8 months ago. Kayla is a prisoner right now. She came out guilty on the allegations. Though I never went to her court hearings, occasionally, my in-laws would tell me how Kayla came clean to the court, admitting years of jealousy of me. She had always dreamed of one of her best friends marrying my husband. Hence, when he started dating me, she would always try to harass me, since she never wanted an outsider to marry her brother. She became jealous when we told my husband's birthday party we were expecting, as she was also going to reveal her pregnancy. She wanted to share her wonderful news, since she had miscarried once, but she felt we stole her opportunity to shine. She became so enraged. Then from her pregnancy hormones, mixed a little bit of rat poison with my supper. She said she wanted me to wind up in the hospital, but she never wanted to physically hurt the baby or myself. She said she deserved a reduced punishment, as she never expected me to offer her husband my plate, and since I essentially poisoned her spouse. Of course, the judge answered her pleadings. She was put to prison and will be far from our life for some considerable while. Jamie is also at last free, since she has also effectively divorced him. We have seen him over the months and keep including him into our family events whenever we can. He informed me that it was never my fault when we spoke, and I profusely apologized to him for handing my plate to him. Hearing that, I had been rehearsing it over and over again in my thoughts, wishing I could have done things differently, so he was never poisoned. I started to cry. That Jamie is doing well right now makes me happy. Regarding Harry and myself, our family now boasts a baby daughter. Our daughter's presence has warmed and lit our life, despite the shadows of the past still there. Being a big brother makes our son Nate very happy, and he has been loving and caring toward his little sister. Seeing our kids connect makes us appreciate things. My parents and in-laws have been there for us all through, guiding us through this new phase of our life. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. Golden Child's sister canceled my flight, took a family vacation without me, but her manipulations finally caught up to her. I, 28F, am employed as a paralegal at one of the leading legal practices in San Francisco that focuses on civil litigation and family law. I find it ironic that, as I cope with my own family drama, I spend my days painstakingly recording evidence for family disagreements. I assist lawyers in constructing cases against manipulative family members who take advantage of and misuse their relatives' trust on a daily basis. I've gotten really excellent at identifying manipulation patterns and obtaining proof, which will soon prove to be more useful to me personally than I could have ever imagined. Let me tell you a little about myself. My parents have always regarded Olivia, my younger sister who is 23F, as their miracle kid. Before Olivia was born, my mom had suffered 3 terrible miscarriages, and the agony of those losses almost caused their marriage to fail. For them, Olivia became a symbol of rebirth and optimism. When she eventually appeared, every time she walked into the room, my dad, 56 meters, a typically quiet high school teacher, would light up. My 54-year-old mother, who owns a small bakery, referred to her as their angel on earth. At first, I understood overprotection can result from trauma. I was 5 years old when Olivia was born, and I had seen my parents go through a difficult time. I could see why they showered her with attention. My parents didn't see, or didn't want to see, how Olivia turned their adoration into a weapon. Even the most seasoned attorneys I deal with would be impressed by her remarkable ability to manipulate emotions. As a child, Olivia demonstrated a superb ability to turn any circumstance to her favor. She knew exactly how to manipulate our parents like a fiddle, and her victim act was worthy of an Oscar. Her strategies grew increasingly cunning and vicious as we grew older. One instance that truly reveals her actual nature comes to mind. Our grandma gave me this vintage pocket watch, which has been in the family for many generations. On my 16th birthday, our great-great-grandfather, who moved from Ireland, owned the exquisitely built watch from the 1890s, which had withstood 2 world wars. For me, the story behind it was everything. Despite receiving a brand new iPhone as a special gift, Olivia pitched a fit because she wanted it too. Remember, this was back when iPhones were still popular. She chose to discipline me when I refused to share it, because after all, it was a birthday present. She sneaked into my room later that night and placed a giant house spider in my pillowcase. Since she knew I was afraid of spiders because of an event at summer camp when I was a kid, Olivia was the ideal choice to play the worried sister. When I woke up screaming and had something crawling on my face, she even succeeded in giving my parents the impression that she had come to my aid right away. Only later, when we were by ourselves, did she confess what she had done, flashing that smug look I had been so accustomed to. A week later, the watch vanished inexplicably. I knew Olivia had taken it, even though we never discovered evidence. She went on the defensive when I accused her, saying that I was jealous of her new iPhone and was only attempting to harm her. The watch never appeared, and I was grounded for a week by my parents for making false accusations. Then there came my junior year, when I had my first serious crush on a man named Jason. We had been studying together for months when he was in my AP chemistry class. I finally had the courage to ask him to a movie. I spent hours choosing the ideal ensemble, which included a brand new blue dress that I had been saving for months at my part-time job at the neighborhood library. Olivia accidentally spilled her grape juice all over it. As soon as Jason entered, she amused him with uncomfortable tales from my early years, such as a particularly embarrassing instance from a school performance in which I had stage fright and became wet myself while I was upstairs getting changed. I was 6 years old. The entire atmosphere was destroyed. By the time I returned downstairs in my backup attire, Olivia had somehow made herself the focus of attention, and Jason could hardly look at me. Jason changed his study partner the following day, and I never heard from him again. She ruined more than just my social life, though. Just hours before the due date, Olivia accidentally erased my almost completed common application essay from our shared family computer when I was applying to colleges in my senior year. The hurried version likely cost me admission to a number of prestigious universities, and I had to spend the entire night revising it. Maybe you should have saved a backup copy. Isn't that what smart people do? She simply shrugged when I challenged her. This trend persisted during our adolescence. My mom would always add, "You know how sensitive she is after everything we went through to have her." No matter how I tried to explain Olivia's behavior to our parents, they would dismiss it with a remark like, "She's just young," or "You need to be more understanding of your sister." I eventually gave up trying. What was the purpose? I was merely the one who caused trouble by speaking up, and Olivia was their best child. Despite being an English teacher who takes great satisfaction in his ability to analyze critically, my dad lost sight of Olivia. All day long, he would point out deceit and manipulation in Shakespeare's characters to his students, but he was unable to recognize the same trends occurring in his own household. Even worse was my mother. Being Olivia's mother had essentially become her entire identity, as though Olivia's most recent accomplishments, the majority of which I subsequently learned she had lied about or stolen credit for from others, were more significant than her own prosperous bakery business. I was eager to get out of that house. By the age of 18, I concentrated on my studies, was accepted to a reputable college across the nation, and left right away in order to avoid having to approach my parents for money. I worked 2 jobs as a research assistant and at the college library. I understood that any financial dependence would offer Olivia grounds to criticize me. It was refreshing to go to college for the first time. I could be myself without Olivia constantly putting me down. However, she made it plain that I wasn't welcome. Whenever I returned home during breaks, which got fewer and farther between, she would ignore me during meals, snoop through my belongings while I wasn't looking, and cut me off in any conversation I attempted to have with our parents. She even once accessed private customer files on my work laptop, which may have led to my termination if someone had discovered it. How did she react when I challenged her? Our parents, as usual, just shrugged and said, "You shouldn't have left it lying around." They also advised me to get along. After that, I started staying in school or spending my breaks elsewhere with friends instead of going home after dedicating myself to my studies. I finished with honors and immediately enrolled in law school. Even my law school graduation was skipped because Olivia had a slight cold and needed them. My parents seemed to be okay with my absence, justifying it as me becoming independent. I am currently 28 years old and have established a prosperous profession as a paralegal at one of the leading law companies in San Francisco. The irony that I spend my days recording the betrayals of other people's families while attempting to forget my own is not lost on me. I specialize in family court matters. Over the past 5 years, I haven't really interacted with Olivia much, only having polite, quick conversations around significant holidays when I bothered to show up at all, with sporadic phone conversations and generic birthday cards. My connection with my parents grew more and more strained. Then, when my dad suffered a near-fatal heart attack a few months ago, everything changed. I threw everything down and ran home when my mother called to tell me. I was on the next trip home after she uttered my name with an urgency I had never heard before. "Madison, please come. Heck, asking for you." Her words broke through years of bitterness. Dad was stabilized and lived, but he was badly shaken by the event. As I observed him battling with the several tubes and monitors connected to him during one of our conversations in the hospital, he expressed his desire to spend more time with his loved ones. He said, "Life's too short," in a voice that was weaker than I had ever heard. In addition to recommending lifestyle modifications like regular exercise, the doctors had prescribed a rigorous pharmaceutical schedule. My throat constricted as he spoke about second chances and regrets. I chose to stay for a few days because I could see his point of view. Perhaps, since I hadn't taken a sick day in 5 years and had accumulated enough goodwill to last a lifetime, my employer was unexpectedly kind. I could work from home, conducting research and preparing documents from my former bedroom. But my return to the house did not sit well with Olivia. She demonstrated this by moving my laptop during client calls, playing loud music while I was attempting to work, and accidentally unplugging my monitor during crucial video conferences, among other tiny acts of violence. Then, one morning at breakfast, Dad suggested that the family go on a trip. He added, in a voice full of enthusiasm, "It's been years since we all went somewhere together," reminding me of the father I knew before Olivia seized control of our lives. He wanted to travel to Hawaii, which we had discussed going to when I was younger before Olivia, before the miscarriages, before everything changed. At first, I was hesitant because hanging out with Olivia for a long period wasn't really exciting, knowing how much it meant to Dad. Though, I consented. During that brunch, I noticed hope in his eyes, something I hadn't seen in years. Although Olivia seemed more interested in eating nails than going on a trip with me, she was unable to refuse Dad's proposition. While he was still recuperating from a heart attack, he booked flights and lodging, taking care of everything. I made sure everything was in order, asked for time off, and even prepared case papers ahead of time to make sure nothing would stop me from going. However, I learned that my flight had been inexplicably canceled when we arrived at the airport. I felt angry and perplexed. We went to the airline desk to find out what had happened because Dad insisted he had purchased and paid for all for tickets, only my ticket had been denied. I thought. As I looked at Olivia, it was the same sneaky smile I'd seen so many times before, the one she'd worn after the spider incident, after she'd ruined my date with Jason, after she'd gained every little triumph over me. I went straight up to her. I said, "You did this, didn't you?" Mom leapt to Olivia's support. "Your sister would never do something like that." Dad then made an effort to make things better. "It's probably just an airline error. Let's not point fingers." As she mentioned that my ticket had been canceled yesterday from my parents' home IP address while I was at work. The airline lady appeared uneasy. I was taken aback, since there were no other flights that day. It didn't seem like a good idea to fly alone the following day. They still refused to accept Olivia as she truly was, despite all the evidence that pointed to her. After hesitating and speculating that they might postpone and reschedule, Dad began to talk about how long it had been since he had taken a holiday, how the doctors had warned that stress was harmful for his heart, and that perhaps it would be best to keep quiet. Mom remarked, "You travel so much for work anyway," without looking at me. "You're not really missing out." Their remarks hurt, to once again prioritize Olivia's comfort over my involvement in the family. They appeared to be requesting permission to depart without me. "You're welcome to go without me," I remarked in a cold tone as I made my way back to San Francisco, determined to move on from the entire situation. I had no idea that Olivia's reputation as a golden child would ultimately bring about her demise. Something changed inside of me as I stood alone in the airport, watching my parents and Olivia board their aircraft. I learned the value of paperwork, case building, and waiting for the proper opportunity. During my years of paralegal employment, I had been surreptitiously gathering proof of Olivia's manipulation, including witness statements from former classmates and neighbors, emails, texts, and security camera footage. It was time to exploit my professional expertise for my own benefit. In that airport terminal, I decided to stop being the understanding elder sister, no more ignoring the situation. The culmination of years of gathering evidence of Olivia's deceptive actions was imminent, and she wouldn't even anticipate it. I knew better than anyone, because I worked as a paralegal. The truth always comes out in the end, and I would be prepared when it did. First update. I never thought my mother would call me in such a frenzy so quickly. As I listened to her frantic voice describe what had transpired at their Hawaii resort, my hands began to shake. Their flawed family vacation had devolved into a nightmare that would ultimately reveal Olivia's true character. It started when Dad's heart medicine started to inexplicably stop working. After 3 days of closely monitoring his medication, my parents discovered that 3 to 4 pills per day were routinely disappearing. Initially, they thought he was misplacing his pills or taking them without remembering, which was a worrying but reasonable explanation, considering his recent health problems. My father insisted on looking everywhere in their suite, but at first, my mother didn't accept the obvious implications. Nothing was discovered until my mother was at the pool and went to borrow sunscreen from Olivia's room. All of Dad's missing heart pills were in Olivia's bedside drawer, as was his backup prescription bottle, which had reportedly been misplaced during packing. Olivia didn't even attempt to refute it when pressed. "You shouldn't have invited her in the first place," she yelled, alluding to their original plan to include me, because this trip was supposed to be about us, the real family. Instead, she launched into a diatribe about how I had ruined their perfect family vacation. Things quickly got out of hand. Olivia started flinging objects around the hotel room, breaking multiple glasses and a lamp. She reacted angrily to my father's attempts to soothe her, accusing him of being weak for attempting to reintroduce that drama into their lives and claiming that his heart attack was really a ploy to get attention. When hotel security received complaints about the noise, they weren't impressed by Olivia's performance. unlike when our parents were there. When she refused to stop and started saying that everyone would pay, the hotel staff phoned the police. As my mother explained how she was handcuffed and brought away, I could hear her yelling in the background. She kept saying, "It was all your fault." My mother wept on the phone. "But Madison, she could have killed your father. Those medications, he needs them." The doctor said even missing a single day could trigger another heart attack. I remained calm and professional. I had learned how to maintain my composure in the face of internal turmoil via years of handling high-stress legal circumstances. I gave the order. "Mom, I need you to do exactly what I say. Take photos of where you found the medication. Document everything. Use your phone to record any conversations with hotel staff or police. Don't delete anything Olivia sends you." The voice of my mother broke. "The police want to press charges. They're saying it's attempted domestic assault or something. Should we get her a lawyer?" "No," I firmly said. "Let me handle everything from here." This was the kind of thing I had been planning. Olivia was taken out of custody 24 hours later, but her freedom would not last long. In her room, the police had discovered more than just cardiac medication. They also found a number of stolen goods, such as cell phones and wallets from other hotel visitors. While our parents were at the beach pool, she had been methodically breaking into other rooms. Olivia wasn't finished, though. As soon as she got back to the hotel, she started planning her retaliation. She essentially left our parents stranded in Hawaii without access to cash or identity by hiding their wallets and passports. Her message was unmistakable. She would ensure that everyone suffered alongside her if she were going down. I started working with the hotel security personnel right away and made arrangements for emergency monies to be supplied via Western Union. As soon as I described the process, they were unexpectedly supportive. As it happens, Olivia was already under suspicion by the hotel for acting strangely around the rooms of other visitors when she was seen trying to enter the hotel's medical storage facility, which had emergency cardiac drugs on security tape. It was the last straw. She claimed she was only seeking aspirin when staff confronted her, but the keypad's access log revealed several unsuccessful attempts to enter a restricted location. As I was coordinating with the hotel security staff and local law enforcement that evening, Olivia began sending me more bizarre texts. She said that during her prior snooping, she had obtained private information from my laptop and threatened to disclose it to my company. She was unaware that years prior, I had already reported and documented her unauthorized access attempt to the security team at my company. The truth was shattering. My parents, who were finally recognizing Olivia for who she truly was. Dad's blood pressure was dangerously high due to the stress, and Mom was crying uncontrollably while the court case started. I made arrangements for them to relocate to a separate hotel, far from Olivia. During our most recent phone conversation, my father observed, "We ought to have paid attention to you years ago." I had never heard his voice sound older and more worn out. "We couldn't realize we were losing you instead, because we were so terrified of losing her." Olivia is currently being investigated by the police. She faces severe charges based on my documenting of her prior actions, as well as the recently obtained hotel proof. Karma can occasionally operate through the legal system. Second update. Since my last report, things have drastically become worse. Olivia was released on bail after being charged with several counts of stealing and reckless endangerment, with the stipulation that she must return to our parents' home and attend required mental health assessments. But what transpired next demonstrated that things were much worse than any of us had thought. Olivia transformed our parents' home into a psychological battleground without expressing any regret. She started by methodically deleting family pictures, but just those that featured me. Olivia said she was cleaning the house of negative energy when Mom questioned her about it. Then in the middle of the night, she started moving all the furniture around, making loud noises that kept our parents from falling asleep. When she began to interfere with Dad's new medicine schedule, the true risk became evident. He would miss doses or take them at the wrong times because she would alter the time on every clock in the house. She pretended to be innocent when apprehended, saying she was only trying to help organize things better. Any change to his pharmaceutical regimen could result in another cardiac episode, the physicians had cautioned. While officially remaining within the law, Olivia came up with inventive methods to ruin our parents' lives. So, I promptly filed for an emergency restraining order. At night, she would stand quietly in their bedroom doorway and watch them attempt to go to sleep, or she would play music that was precisely 1 decibel below the noise regulation limit. When Dad found out that the brake lines on his automobile had been tampered with, it was the tipping point. The mechanic verified that the damage was deliberate, but we were unable to identify Olivia. She accidentally ignited a minor fire in the kitchen at 3 a.m. that same day while cooking. My dad called me crying, "We can no longer live this way, Madison. My blood pressure is skyrocketing, and your mother hasn't slept in days." However, she is our daughter. How could we have let her down so severely? I made arrangements for Olivia to be evaluated by a mental health team using my legal connections. Instead of cooperating, she launched into a thorough conspiracy theory about how I had planned everything, including the hotel mishaps and Dad's heart attack, to turn our parents against her. The initial assessment from the evaluation team was unsettling. They observed a total lack of empathy and extreme narcissistic characteristics, pointing to a pattern of behavior that had probably been growing for years. Olivia would either deny everything or defend it as essential for protecting her family from my influence when I showed her the evidence of her behavior. The process has been a nightmare, but our parents have finally consented to formally evict her. She has been methodically wrecking the house by punching holes in the walls, ruining appliances, and shredding documents. She asserts that the house would never feel the same without her and says she is marking her territory. Things took a far darker turn last night during one of her subsequent 3 a.m. incidents. Eventually, she wrote resignation letters to the principal of his school and gained access to Dad's email account, claiming to be helping them simplify their lives. She then went on to cancel all of their utility and credit card bills. The police are called in once more, but Olivia seemed to enjoy operating just outside the law. It is difficult to make a case for her quick removal since she is aware of the limits of her influence before going beyond established legal bounds. I've been painstakingly recording everything in an effort to compile a case that should lead to both required mental health treatment and criminal prosecution. My years of experience as a paralegal are coming in very handy. Every event, text message, and item of property damage is being recorded and validated. Since they are unable to go back to their own house, our parents are currently lodging at a motel. Mom's voice was hollow when she called me yesterday. We never realized we needed to protect the world from her because we spent so many years protecting her from the world. Next week is the date of the eviction hearing in court. Although Olivia is unaware of it yet, I have gathered proof of financial fraud she has perpetrated over the previous few years using our parents' information. I've been planning for years, because sometimes the best defense is a well-prepared offense. Third update. Nobody could have predicted how dramatically the final meeting with Olivia would unfold. She went from using psychological warfare to open criminal action. After being served with the official eviction notice, she planned what I can only characterize a deliberate attempt to demolish everything our family had worked so hard to create. 3 days prior, on what would be her last night at our parents' house, she gained access to Dad's retirement funds and tried to move the whole amount to an offshore account she had covertly opened. Fortunately, it was discovered in time by the bank's fraud detection system. After that failed, she started methodically destroying priceless family relics, including Dad's collection of first edition books from his teaching career, our great-grandmother's wedding china, and photo albums from the 1940s. All of them were purposefully destroyed. She even claimed to be cleaning the house of generational trauma while live-streaming portions of her outburst on social media. When she found out about the covert camera system had lawfully built with our parents' consent to record her activities, the issue reached a breaking point. She reacted violently and instantly, screaming that she would sooner burn the house down than allow them to win. She snatched up a kitchen knife and began slicing furniture. I was asked to disclose the extensive evidence file had put together by the police negotiator. It included years' worth of documented incidents, including surveillance footage from the house demonstrating her deliberate destruction of property, financial documents demonstrating systematic theft from our parents' accounts, and medical records demonstrating her meddling in Dad's medical care. Olivia was finally arrested following a 4-hour standoff. The police's discovery that she had been using several false identities during her booking, however, was the true shock. She has reportedly been using similar strategies to con other families, posing as a distant cousin in need of assistance or a long-lost relative. Currently, the district attorney is pursuing several felonies, including identity theft, criminal threats, criminal destruction of property, and attempted financial fraud. The foundation of their argument is now the evidence I have accumulated over the years. Last thoughts. While they deal with everything, our parents are living with me in San Francisco. Just the three of us had our first genuine family meal in years yesterday. I keep thinking about all the signs we ignored. All the times Madison tried to tell us, Mom sobbed during dessert. We were so caught up in the idea of not losing her that we never realized we were losing ourselves, said Dad, who has now begun to recover his health now that he is no longer influenced by Olivia. During the police search, the vintage pocket watch that Olivia had stolen years prior was discovered among her belongings. I'm reminded that all realities come to light in due time. As I hold it in and listen to its steady tick, my dad handed it to me last night and said it should have been yours all along. Going forward, we're concentrating on family healing, the genuine sort, based on openness and respect for one another rather than coercion and terror. The person who ought to have been closest to you is sometimes the most difficult to eliminate out of your life. However, we've discovered that a smaller, healthier family is preferable to a larger, toxic one. I appreciate all of your help and guidance during this trip. When things got hard, your remarks kept me going. We are especially grateful to the community's legal experts who provided advice. You are truly remarkable. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.